I think Andor is the best Star Wars thing that's come out since the original trilogy. Like, this isn't a diss at anything that's come out since then. I enjoy the prequels, I love The Mandalorian. There's a bunch of Star Wars stuff that I've enjoyed since the OG movies came out, you know? But Andor gives me something that I've always wanted from Star Wars. It's a type of storytelling that's more mature, more patient. And that's not to say Star Wars hasn't been mature or patient before, but the way Andor is executed genuinely feels like it should be on a list of TV shows like Breaking Bad, Barry, Game of Thrones, shows that feel like they're oriented at a primarily adult audience, with the intention of giving them complex, nuanced, multi-layered storytelling. Now before we keep going, let's talk about today's sponsor. You've heard about him, the myth, the legend, Raid Shadow Legends. It's an awesome AAA quality game right in your pocket, something you can dive into and play at any time. Explore millions of champion combinations and master countless tactics as you take on raid bosses, dungeon runs, campaign battles, and PvP arena matches. With hundreds of artifacts to equip and over 600 champions blessed with unique skills, you can build your team, develop your champions, and raid your way. While playing the game, I've been using Gala a lot. She can honestly hold her own against tankier teams, and also Kalia. Her default skill and her third skill put out a lot of HP burn, and that can deal a lot of damage. But also, yeah, I love women that can kick my ass. And this month is huge. They just released a brand new faction, the Sylvan Watchers, with some amazing new champions. Forest Elves, Ents, Druids, Fays, they're all here. And if that's not enough, Raid's got a full lineup of events, along with a new season of the Forge Pass, where you can get your hands on some of the most powerful gear the game has ever seen. There's never been a better time to get started, so new players use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack worth almost $30, a free champion Vergies, and also this cool in-game loot. You'll find the rewards in your inbox for the next 30 days only. So download Raid yourself to your mobile phone or PC. Yeah, it's on PC. Thanks so much Raid for sponsoring this video, and let's get on with Andor. Most Star Wars stuff is aimed at general audiences. And while it can get mature, it still has an adventurous charm, and I assume a lot of you like me grew up with Star Wars. It was about the cool lightsaber fights, the insane effects, the incredible score by John Williams. But Andor doesn't rely on what we usually love about Star Wars. It doesn't fall back on crazy fight scenes, insane planets to explore, cool Sith and Jedi. Mainly, it doesn't fall back on the Skywalker saga. Andor is a Star Wars story that's kinda detached from Star Wars. It's set in the Star Wars universe, but it doesn't suffer from the same pitfalls a bunch of other Star Wars media has, which is relying so much on the Skywalker saga. Take Obi-Wan Kenobi, which should have been the greatest Star Wars show ever. It ended up being a mediocre mess. A lot of it just rode on the fact that it's Anakin, it's Obi-Wan. These are characters that we've seen before. Because it's so badly thought that just by existing it would matter, it ended up being quickly forgotten. Meanwhile, Andor isn't trying to emulate prior Star Wars stories. It's not trying to push any cameos or glupshitos at us. It's a very intimate, very focused political thriller about Cassian Andor, an almost character study on how a man who only wants to run can slowly evolve into a man who wants to fight for freedom, who wants to, well, rebel. Star Wars has always been about rebellions, about fighting a war, but it never felt like this. Star Wars has always been very political. From original trilogy to prequel trilogy, it always shows us the broad ideas of what the Empire, a fascist regime, can do. We see how there's always troopers everywhere, how they have the authority to do whatever they want, wherever they want. There's war, there's rebels, there's people being oppressed and having to stand up for their rights as human beings. And in Andor, we see this concept much more deeply, much more personally. Imagine that scene where Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker have to evade stormtroopers in Tatooine, and multiply it by 10. Andor is about the rebellion before it even began. It's about individuals having to work together to start a revolution, and it does so perfectly by making the characters feel like they're suffocating. The cast is constantly on the move, and if they're not on the move, they're hiding. Our heroes feel weak, feel vulnerable all the time, and it leads to moments like this, where a simple TIE fighter is the most frightening thing in the world. The show has its glorious, over-the-top visual moments, but 95% of the show is character drama. It's action, but not physical action. Star Wars has never felt like this because it's more about a movement than one individual. Sure, Andor is the protagonist, and he participates in acts of political aggression throughout the series, but a lot of it isn't about, oh, the Empire wants to get Cassian Andor and they fight all the time. No, a lot of it is also about how what Andor does, what the rebels do, and what the Empire does affects the characters of the show. It's about how Andor participates in the slow insurrection of the Empire. Basically everything right before the wars in Star Wars begins. It doesn't feel like the heroic quest of one or a few heroes that have to single-handedly take down the enemy, where it feels glorious, dramatic, operatic. None of our heroes have powers, they don't have the Force, they don't have lightsabers, they're just people. This show is about the journey of a whole movement, and to not lose ourselves in the mess of rebellion, we track one character to lead us through all of it. Tony Gilroy, creator of the series, producer of Nightcrawler, director of Michael Clayton, reviser of Rogue One, knew exactly what he wanted to do with this show. This guy considers the show the education of Cassian Andor, according to his interview on StarWars.com. He has so much to learn, Gilroy says. It's the road to Damascus for him. It's a real education. There's a pivotal moment where he can no longer pretend that he's completely unaffected by the Empire anymore. He can no longer pretend that he's just a mercenary. He can no longer have one foot in and one foot out. He's in such a deep, deep problem, he has to make some really big decisions about who he's gonna be. And if you've watched the show, I think you know what moment this is. What's cool is that while the show is a political thriller, it wasn't written with the idea of let's make a political show in mind. Gilroy said that his primary responsibility is to the characters and to make an adventure story, in an interview for IndieWire. That being said, that's one of the things that just naturally occurs when you want to make a story about revolution, especially one set in a universe called Star Wars. He says it just happens instinctively. We understand why the rebellion exists in Star Wars, obviously, but the show really wants to delve into the background, the people we don't see, the unsung heroes, the ones in the shadows that make everything possible. Like Rogue One, but better, Andor focuses on the individuals that sacrifice their lives to make sure the Empire doesn't win. Or sometimes even simpler, just to make sure the Empire doesn't get the satisfaction. Gilroy said about the show,
"This is a chance to do a show about the ordinary people of this galaxy and the pressure that they're put under by these sort of tectonic revolutionary pressures that are being put on them from all sides."
One of the coolest moments in the show is when Andor meets Nemik. While Andor stands for, well, nothing really, other than himself, Nemik is full-on ready to fight the Empire. His purpose for fighting contrasts Andor's personal interest in such a heavy way, and it's the distinction between recognizing you're living under a fascist empire and doing nothing, and recognizing you're living under one and doing something.
That is the real trick of the Imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident.
Nemik is the catalyst of Andor's recognition that people are out there risking their lives for something greater than themselves. He almost has a violent reaction from being told that fighting the Empire is important, that resisting is important. It's almost like his ideologies are being questioned.
So you think it's hopeless, do you? We should just submit and be thankful. Just take what we're given.
Do I look thankful to you?
He's confused and conflicted when Marva, who's his mom, tells him she's gonna stay in Ferrix. He recognizes the decisions these side characters are making, but cannot at all put himself in that position, and he tries his best to remove himself from the oppressed world he lives in. But the thing is, the Empire lives in every world. The moment Cassian Andor is imprisoned and sent to a labor camp for the Empire is the moment he begins to recognize that there is no escape, that there is no running. When faced with an enemy, his back against a wall, he'd rather fight than beg.
I'd rather die trying to take them down than die giving them what they want.
Now, there's a large amount of UK and Irish actors in this show. It's pretty wild, and all of them do incredible. Diego Luna, of course, is excellent as this brooding loner. Let's go, Latino representation, that's also awesome. But holy shit, props to actors like Andy Serkis, Stellan Skarsgård, Denise Goh, for some absolutely electrifying performances. I also hope I said their names right. If I didn't, I apologize. Those actors are just some of the standouts, but literally everyone is absolutely incredible. And let me just say that Skarsgård's character Luthen is one of the most raw, most incredible characters in the history of Star Wars. He's older compared to a lot of the characters in the show, and with that age comes history, experience, and pain. Pain from having to sacrifice so much of his time and energy to a rebellion that he may never see, having to neglect the simple things people take for granted. It's brilliant writing and storytelling.
So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
Something else I appreciate is that while easily they could have just chucked stormtroopers and all that in the show, they really don't. They don't pop up that often. Stormtroopers are meant to be elite soldiers, they're treated as such, and they're there for the worst case scenarios. Most of the suppression is done by the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau. They make sure everything runs smoothly and are the ones that are targeting the protagonist, Cassian Andor. They handle everything more locally, they're cogs in the Empire's machine, and it's incredible how understandable yet hateable characters like Cyril Karn and Dedra Meero can be. They both want to uphold what they believe to be justice, the law. It's this unbreakable, unwavering truth to them, and they're so blinded by it that they can't recognize the gray areas that humanity operates under. It's brutally honest storytelling, and that's yet another thing Gilroy talked about with this show. In an interview for IGN, he said, "We didn't want to do anything that was fan service. The mandate in the very beginning was that it would be as absolutely non-cynical as it could possibly be, that the show would just be real and honest." Gilroy wants to go quote-unquote down the street, focus on the background, those unsung heroes like I said before, and not emphasize characters we have seen before in a way to make our jaws drop and point at the screen. If they're there, it's cause they're needed. And unlike a lot of prior Disney shows, CG Luke Skywalker isn't here, there's no Darth Vader. It's about the raw, brutal nature of starting revolutions, starting wars. And I love how the show respects its audience enough to care, and doesn't dangle keys in front of us to make us pay attention. It really is the story of a rebellion, and seeing Cassian Andor go from hiding from the Empire and trying to run away, to helping lead a prison revolt and inspire its leader is incredible. Just absolutely jaw-dropping stuff from this show. If you haven't watched it, I hope I convinced you. And if you have, isn't it such a banger? Hey, you made it to the end, thanks so much for watching the video. Make sure to check out Interstellar Ranger Commence, Browntable's original animated series. The first 2 episodes are out now, and I hope you enjoy them. Thanks so much ACU for this drawing of Hope Griffin from Interstellar Ranger Commence. It looks awesome, baby Hope is super adorable. Thank you so much for the drawing. And of course, thank you so much patrons for supporting the channel. Your support means a lot to me, especially as right now, videos kind of aren't really popping off, so I really very much appreciate it. And of course, if you want to support the channel, you can support the Patreon. Lastly, if you want a chair to be able to sit at the brown table forever and ever until the day you die, then just subscribe and turn on notifications. You'll officially have a chair, you will not be a chair unless you want me to call you a chair? That's up to you. But yeah, thank you so much for coming to the table, and I'll see you all next time.